How did a volunteer soldier who went on to become a highly trusted armed police officer and a family man of two transform into one of Britain's most evil? Keep watching as I investigate former London police officer Wayne Couzens. It was a chilly and wintry December 1972 in Dover, in south of England, when Wayne Couzens was born. After leaving school, he started life as an adult in the 90s, working as an apprentice mechanic in the family business called BCB Dover. Couzens' grandfather, Walter, started the business in 1968, but his father, Ray, took over the reins in 1978, until he retired and shut down the business, quite recently really, in 2015. During this period, Couzens was a volunteer soldier within the Territorial Army Unit based in Dover. It's also reported that at some point, he transferred to being a private in the Territorial Army with C Company, 3rd Battalion, Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment based in Canterbury. Either way, here he is pictured in 2002 during a national campaign to attract more recruits to the Corps. Now, during that same year, he took part in a TA weekend exercise, and a 29-year-old Couzens said at the time, "We came along for the challenge and adventure. The TA is a happy compromise between the regular army and a civilian job, and we're having a fantastic time." His time being fantastic in the TA didn't stop there. In 2004, it was reported that he aced the battalion-run driving course. And 2 years later, he met Ukrainian scientist Elena Sukorba in Switzerland, where she was working, and they married, starting a family pretty much soon after that. Couzens made an effort to learn the Ukrainian language, and according to his mother-in-law, Nina Sukorba, the family would visit Ukraine once a year. His brother-in-law, Vitaly Oberhof, described Couzens as an extremely warm person, very polite and calm. His career continued to move at a pace though, and from the Territorial Army, he spent time as a special constable, volunteering for the Kent Police Force in 2005. During his tenure there in 2008, he became a traffic officer, and with his family, they moved to a rented flat in Folkestone for 3 years. His landlady at the time, Jeanette Roy, said he'd only just qualified as a policeman and was working in Dover. He was a nice fella. The only thing I found strange was when he said he was going over to Ukraine to get his wife and he brought her back. She didn't speak very good English. I'm sensing a pattern here. A lot of people at the time thought that this dude was like a top bloke, like once say boo to a goose. If only they knew what was going to happen. In 2011, he joined the Civil Nuclear Constabulary. They are an armed police unit in charge of protecting civil nuclear sites and nuclear materials in England, Scotland and Wales. Basically, hella dangerous stuff, right? Now, a few years later, they moved out of their rented accommodation in Folkestone, and in 2015, the family bought a 3-bedroomed house in Freeman's Way, Kent, for 200 grand. One of their neighbours, John Chidwick, described Couzens as a nice, well-spoken and friendly bloke. Pretty much carrying on the whole narrative that the dude was fine, right? A couple more years later, he joined the Metropolitan Police Force, which from this moment onwards, I'm going to refer to as the Met because it's just easier that way. And in February 2020, he transferred to the elusive and extremely exclusive Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command unit as a firearms officer. Bit of a mouthful, I know. Now, within this unit, Couzens would protect diplomats. He would also guard important buildings such as the Palace of Westminster, Downing Street, where the Prime Minister lives, and, various other embassies. He'd even be deployed to major events attended by the very, very senior members of the royal family. So the top of the top, the cream of the cream we're talking about here. But as Couzens climbed the ladder, and carving out for himself an extremely successful career, his personal life would take a severe, dark turn. Way back when Couzens worked for the family business, A former colleague said that he had noticed that he was attracted to extremely nasty, intimate images and videos. During his younger years, in his early 20s, it's alleged that he was involved with a 14-year-old girl. A former friend told British TV channel ITV that, at the time, he would have been 23, was almost kinda creepy behaviour. He wasn't violent in any way, he wasn't disrespectful in any way, but he was dating a girl that was significantly younger than him. During his highly successful climb on the career ladder, though, Cousin's neighbours would notice that something wasn't quite right about him. One of them went on a night out with him and said he was just odd. Very odd in his mannerisms. The things he said, he would say shocking things. Another neighbour said they hadn't spoken to Cousins, however, they'd served him at a cafe they used to work at and said he brought his children a couple of times and ordered food. Seemed a very bad-tempered person. Not very polite. During his career, whilst working at the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, he was given the nickname of someone who intimately attacked someone against their will because he made female colleagues feel very uncomfortable. And because of YouTube, I can't really say the name, but Google it, it's there. This nickname was actually confirmed, by the way, by Chief Inspector of the Constabulary, Sir Tom Windsor, on BBC Radio 4's The World at One. Sir Tom also said he also had allegedly a reputation in terms of substance misuse, extreme, nasty, intimate images, and other offences of this kind. Now, in June 2015, 3 years before he was recruited by the Met, he was allegedly involved in an incident where another male motorist claimed that they saw Cousins driving around in his car around Dover, but he didn't have any clothes on from the waist down, if you get me drift. Now, this witness actually reported the incident to the Kent Police Force, but the amazing police force that they were, they took no further action. There have also been 2 further allegations of Cousins performing similar actions of intimate exposure of the kind, one of which happened last year on 28th of February 2021 to a female staff at McDonald's in South London, and this event was actually captured on the restaurant's CCTV, so it definitely happened. And this happened weeks before he captured Sarah Everard, and that event would send shockwaves up and down Britain like nobody's business. On 10th of February 2021, Cousins went onto Amazon and ordered a police standard handcuffs that would be used to convince people he was an on-duty police officer rather than actually off-duty. You know, as you do, right? The next month, Cousins would work his last ever shift from 7 p.m. on the 2nd of March to 7 a.m. on the 3rd of March as part of the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Unit, and he was actually posted at the US Embassy. It's reported that Cousins had spent some of that shift talking about leaving the job over a pay dispute, and he started to build up his alibi, you get my meaning, by stating that he might sign off work sick with stress. I remember that later on, because after finishing his shift, he was seen at 4:47 p.m. on CCTV at an enterprise car hire establishment in Dover, hiring a vehicle from them. At the time, he continued to set up his alibi by telling his family that he was still working. Later on in the evening at 8 p.m, Cousins is seen in Tesco's at Kensington, West London, buying a pack of 14 hairbands, where it's considered that he may have bought them to use as some kind of like cockamamie restraints of some kind. Now, with all of these false alibis set up in place, Cousins was ready to commit his most evil act that would send the most shocking shockwaves up and down Britain. From when Cousins bought the hairbands on 3rd of March, just over an hour later at 9:30 p.m, his hunt began in his hire car for a lone young female. This is when he saw Sarah Everard, a 33-year-old marketing executive, walking home alone on Poinders Road after visiting a friend's house in Clapham. He pulls up alongside Everard and shows her his warrant card. He then uses the pandemic lockdown rules, by the way, to make a false arrest, handcuffs her using the ones he bought from Amazon, and places her in the back of his hire car. Now, if you think that's bad, oh, it's about to get worse. He then takes her on what I would imagine is a terrifying 80-mile journey, and he's caught on CCTV at 11:43 p.m, showing him driving to North Military Road in Dover in his hire car, and then he's transferring Everard into his own vehicle. Now, 10 minutes later, starting at 11:53 p.m, and then ending at like 3 minutes to 1 in the morning, the cell phone site showed that around the Sibbotswold area, Cousin's phone was within this vicinity. It's believed that it was here that Sarah Everard would meet her extremely violent and gruesome end. Cousins would intimately attack her against her will, and then he used his police belt to wrap it around her neck, squeezing all the air out of her until there was no life left. With her lifeless body, he then set her clothes, and her possessions on fire, eventually dumping her amongst nearby building waste. The following day, on 4th of March, Cousin's cover-up plan went into play. As images of a then-missing Sarah Everard was being shared across the country, Cousins was seen at 2:34 a.m. buying 2 bottles of still water, an apple juice, a Lucasade orange and a carrier bag at BP Dover South Services. Because, you know, being evil is a thirsty thing, right? Later on in the morning at 7:30 a.m, Cousins returns his own car at North Military Road in Dover and takes the hire car away a few minutes later. In the video you're about to see, about 45 minutes goes by, and at 8:14 a.m, he's seen at a Costa Coffee outlet in Biggin Street, Dover, where he buys a hot chocolate with coconut milk and a Bakewell tart, because, you know, being evil is also a hungry job, right? Standing at the till as he is buying his Costa order, he's seen fidgeting and wringing his hands. It's not too long until he returns the hire car at Enterprise at 8:30 a.m, where he had racked up over 300 miles on the clock. He is then back in his own car and arrived back in Kent at 9:20 a.m, where he quickly gets rid of Sarah Everard's phone. At 11:05 a.m, he arrived at Whitfield Services and is seen at a BP petrol station buying diesel for his car, salted caramel latte, and 5.85 litres of petrol, using an empty green petrol can to store it in. The petrol would sickeningly be used later to burn Sarah Everard's body. He also makes sure to stop off at McDonald's around the corner to get himself an extra large value meal and a bottle of orange juice, because, you know, I'm loving it. At 12:40 p.m, his car is seen in Hodswood and a fire is witnessed within the same area, consistent with the location where Cousins had burned Everard's body in a sick attempt to dispose of her and fully erase her physical existence. After all of this, his cover-up did not stop there, though. In the early afternoon on the 5th of March, he called a local vet to make an appointment for the family's French bulldog. He claimed that the bulldog was suffering from separation anxiety. However, when you listen to a snippet of the call here, you can make your own conclusions. But for me, this dude sounds totally relaxed, as if he had not just committed one of the most evil acts you could do on this very God, Earth, green kind of planet, right?
Yeah, I was wondering if I could book my dog in for the vet so I can have a discussion about issues, please. Yep, no, that's fine. We think she's suffering from like separation anxiety, and we have tried absolutely everything. We've tried sort of like to give her puzzles and bits and pieces, treat puzzles and everything. We take her for walks every single day, but we've been told I've got a camera set up as well, but we've been told reliably by our neighbours, so we know there's issues, and she just barks and howls constantly all day. But obviously, when we're there, and then when we come home, she's like so excited and worked up that she kind of wheezes and she's shaking. But where she jumps up and she's got longer claws, she like scratches the kids, she scratches us. Not all by accident, but we're just wondering. We have read online about if it gets to quite a bad degree of separation anxiety, then potential medications like try and calm her down. So that's what we want to talk to the vet about, really, in a way.
Shortly after this, at 1:43 p.m, Cousins is seen at B&Q, which is a DIY store in the UK, in the Honeywood Park Industrial Estate in Dover, where he bought 2 220-litre builder's bags. Between 2:50 p.m. and 3:40 p.m., Cousins would head back into Hodes Wood, where it's alleged that with the use of the builder's bags he had just bought, he used them to move Everard's body. It wasn't until the morning of the 7th of March that he would have the absolute gall, the sadistic idea of all freaking time as far as I'm concerned, of taking his family on a trip to Hodes Wood. Yeah, you hear me right. That same place, you guys, where he burned and hid Sarah Everard's body. He literally took his family to the woodland where Everard lay, as the whole country at this point was totally on the lookout of trying to find her. And disgustingly, oh my goodness, the horror doesn't stop there. He allows his 2 children to play close to the pond where he had actually dumped her. What the deuce, right? Now, Everard would not be hidden for much longer, and she was eventually found on 10th of March with the family paying tribute, saying she had brought so much joy to our lives. She was a shining example to us all. Upon finding her charred remains, the police announced that this missing persons case had turned into a kidnap and murder investigation. It would not be long until the heat would turn towards Cousins, and he would eventually be captured by the people he would call his colleagues. The day before Sarah Everard was found, investigators became suspicious of Everard, and so 3 police officers toddled over to Cousins' house to interview him. Perhaps Cousins, though, got a heads up of this visit because before they went over, neighbours had witnessed him throwing an SD memory card out of the upstairs window, and in probably a fit of panic and desperation, he had wiped all of his data from his mobile phone. At 7:45 p.m, when the initial interview took place, Cousins denied having any knowledge of Sarah Everard, and he made up this completely bizarre story about a gang threatening him and forcing him to take girls against their will, as you can see in this video here.
I'm here to talk to you about Sarah. I'm going to show you a picture. Do you know Sarah?
I don't know.
So, would you like to, do you know where Sarah is?
No.
Right. Okay. Have you ever personally met her?
No, not personally, no.
Have you had any interactions with her at all?
Why would I have personal interactions with her?
Have a good think about it and tell us anything you can about whether or not it's fine.
Okay, well, I am in financial shit, and I've been lent on by, I don't know who they are. They're a group, a gang, whatever, and they told me, right, I need to go and pick up girls and give them to them. It then came through that they're going to harm my family, take them away, and they'll use them instead. At that point I had no option to try and find somebody. So I don't, there's a couple of names. I was told a place to take her. They are, it was between sort of Lenham, Maidstone area that I dropped her off. I still don't know. I don't know. They just, I just parked my car up, and then the van come up behind me, flashed me. They all jumped out, and then they took this girl. They said, you've done good, and I don't know whether my family's going to be alright still. They threatened to take my family away from me. Opened my door, opened that door, pushed me out against the front of the car, took the girl, drove off. That's it. They said, we'll be in touch. So I'm here, I'm off work with stress because I'm here to protect my family. I want to be here 24/7 for my family. They come from my family. I've got nothing myself.
But how do they contact you? How did you contact them?
I tried to fuck over one of their call girls and rip her off. So she's told them, and They've got me. Yeah, they'll come outside. So they'll be outside here.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, right, you're going to be in Folkestone at this time, or you're going to be in Ashford at this time. And that's it. There's no links, no telephone numbers. I'm completely on my own, but at the same time being threatened. It had Romanian plates.
The investigators, though, were not fooled, and they continued to build a case against Cousins, thanks to the CCTV footage and a motorist dash cam that they had obtained within the area where the abduction of Sarah Everard took place and the finding of her body. They had enough evidence, yes, on the 10th of March to arrest this mofo monster at his home of kidnap, intimate attack against someone's will, and murder. On the same day, detectives searched his work locker in the Palace of Westminster, his home and garden, and also took his vehicle for a forensic search for further evidence. Essentially, they were going to leave no stone frickin' unturned. Upon the arrest of Cousins, his wife Elena said, "When the police arrived at the house, I was in shock. At first, I thought it was a prank. I thought, these are his friends, just playing a joke. And to be fair, I kind of see why she'd think that, right? However, it was anything but a joke, and Cousins would soon experience the full extent of the law crashing down on him like a frickin' ton of bricks." From where Cousins was being held at Belmarsh Prison, on 8th of June 2021, he appeared in court via video link at the Old Bailey, and during the trial, prosecutor Tom Little QC told the court that Cousins had a profile on dating website Match.com, set up on 2nd of December 2020 using his middle name of Anthony and giving false details about who he was and stating that he was separated with no children. It was also uncovered that he was in touch with an escort and that shortly before he took Sarah Everard, he told 2 people in a computer hardware store that he was into kinky stuff. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm kind of like chilling out in a computer hardware store, the last thing I'm probably wanting to have a conversation about is, the kinky stuff. You know what I mean? Strange, right? The prosecutor, though, continues, and he also said to the court the following: "It follows that the defendant took his family on a family trip to the very woods where earlier he had left Sarah Everard's body, then returned to burn it, and then returned again to move it or hide it." With all this being said and the overwhelming evidence against him, on 9th of July 2021, Cousins knew there was no way out, and he pleaded guilty to the kidnap and intimate forced upon attack of Sarah Everard. A few months later at the sentencing hearing, on 30th of September 2021, Lord Justice Fulford handed him a whole life sentence, the kind where no matter what, he will never be a free man again and will live the rest of his days rotting behind bars. Handing down this sentence, the judge said the misuse of a police officer's role, such as occurred in this case, in order to kidnap, forced intimate action, and a murder of a lone victim is of equal seriousness as a murder for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, ideological cause. You have eroded the confidence that the public are entitled to have in the police forces of England and Wales. You have very considerably added to the sense of insecurity that many have living in our cities, perhaps particularly women when travelling by themselves, and especially at night. Now, as I've discussed with you guys, during this episode, there were clear warning signs and events of misconduct that Cousins committed leading up to the murder of Sarah Everard, some of which the police force were damn well aware of, right? So how the deuce was he allowed into the Met and eventually join its highly elusive parliamentary and diplomatic unit? Now, it's said that as a result of the Paris terror attacks of 2017, there was a big, massive, desperate rush of attracting new police officers into the Met. Even Assistant Met Commissioner, so, the second in command top dog here, Nick Epfrave, admitted, right, that the vetting process on Cousins was not done correctly when he joined him in 2018. And furthermore, when he was promoted to the Met's Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Unit, the enhanced vetting process that, usually goes along that, somehow didn't take place with Cousins. You couldn't make this shiz up, right? As of the timing of this recording, recently in January 2022, an official government inquiry was launched by Home Secretary Priti Patel to investigate how a serving Met police officer could do the things he did towards Sarah Everard and look at any red flags that they missed. Called the, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the Angiolini Inquiry, named after Dame Elise Angiolini, QC, who's leading it, we'll look into the considerations of the systematic failures that allowed Cousins to be a police officer and establish the following. A timeline of Cousins' career and relevant incidents, including prior allegations of criminal behaviour and/or misconduct. The circumstances and decision-making surrounding his vetting and re-vetting, including whether any potential risks and/or red flags were missed, as well as any matters arising from his transfer between forces. His overall conduct, performance, training, and any abuse of his police powers. The extent to which any issues about his behaviour, particularly in relation to women, were known and raised by colleagues, including professional standards departments and senior leaders. Shocked by the absolute violent nature a police officer undertook against an innocent member of the public, this has since prompted Britain to have a serious discussion about violence against women and the differences in attitudes that both men and women have when it comes to personal safety. Not since the days of the Yorkshire Ripper has this conversation been at the forefront of the public's mind so vividly. But once considered a trusted police officer who was supposed to be a protector of our community and uphold the law to the highest standards, Cousins would betray the trust of the police force and the public he served in one of the most shocking, calculated, and extremely violent ways possible. This would ultimately make Wayne Cousins one of Britain's most evil. If you liked this and want more, then make sure you subscribe to join our Alter Nerd tribe. Like, share, comment, all of that good stuff. And until the next time, you guys, laters.